Basic on Google. That's crazy. I love it. Yeah. Because of them, I'm going to be online. Mess of Maserata, Kenyatta, and Maserata. There are only, I mean, one, two, one. Now let me.
Io ci sono in teoria, eh? Oh. No, tu mi senti? Qualcuno mi sente? Non so, Rosita mi senti?
Sì, eccomi.
Mi senti?
Sì?
Parla un po' perché in realtà ti sento male.
Can you hear me?
Ma male,
No, io
sento
non ti sento
poco.
proprio.
Voi mi sentite?
Sì, ti sento ma piano.
I cannot hear you.
Provo a mettere le cuffiette?
No, è che c'avevo il coso pianissimo.
Ah, ok.
Ok. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfetto. Mm.
Mi sentite?
Yes, I can hear you.
Senti, se siamo solo noi lasciamo perdere. Ma avete sentito o no?
Sì, ma prima c'era una registrazione in corso,
Anche adesso, infatti, sì. Quindi
quindi non puoi lasciar perdere.
Ma come no? Sì, guardate. Se siamo solo noi tre non c'è proprio alcun senso.
considera che c'è sempre registrazione in corso, quindi attenderei qualche istante.
Prima è stata inquadrata un'aula giusto giù, che era vuota.
Esatto. Quindi secondo me possiamo aspettare qualche minuto,
Sì, certo, sì, sì.
poi. So good afternoon. We can see that we are already online with Lagos and with the conference.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon to you. So I think we can wait just a few minutes and then we can start with this panel if you agree. I hope you can hear as well.
Yeah,
Okay, so we will start in a couple of minutes.
okay.
Sorry, Rosita, how can I project the image of PowerPoint?
Let me see, because you are not because you don't have the possibility to share.
No.
Are you watching my presentation? Because can you
So
see it?
Yes.
For Giuseppe,
Okay.
it's fine, but you don't have the function. Let me see if you are co-presenter. No, you have the same profile of Giuseppe and me.
If I go on Altro, I have just Lavagna.
No, down there next to the participants and chat, you don't have the possibility to share the screen. Is
No.
a green button? No.
Condividi schermo.
Yes. Okay, I saw it.
Okay, great. Okay, so I think that we can start. So we are really happy to be here with you, and this panel is managed by the University of Macerata. So we are talking with you directly from Italy. We are really sorry that we cannot join you in Lagos, but this year was not possible. In this panel, we will have 3 presentations. The first one by Giuseppe Capriotti, the second one by Francesco Rocchetti, and the third one by myself, Rosita De Luigi. So if you agree, we can start with the panel with the presentation, and maybe we can leave some space and time at the end of the 3 presentations in order to have the possibility to ask questions, information, or maybe some clarification. So this panel proposal is about the possibility to representing and rebuilding identity and otherness from artistic works to plural narratives. I want just to tell you that we built together this panel in order to stress the transdisciplinarity between art, education, and our perspectives. Since we were involved and we are still involved in several projects, especially between Italy and Kenya. So we want to carry out this kind of research in a practical way and at the same time at the theoretical level. Today, we will share with you some of our results of our research paths in this field of art and education. So our main aim and goal is to mix several languages and to talk with you, and also to prepare and create a space of co-construction of knowledge between Italy and Kenya. So I will give the floor to Giuseppe Capriotti. He will introduce us to a speech that is about rebuilding a Kenyan identity through visual arts, the case of Peter Ngugi. Giuseppe Capriotti is an associate professor in early modern art history at the University of Macerata, and he gave seminars in several European universities, and he conducted research as Marie Curie Fellow Researcher at Pwani University in Kilifi and at Kenyatta University in Nairobi in Kenya. So Giuseppe, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. I hope that you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. And you can see my presentation.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot. So the aim of this paper is to analyze the current strategies of constructing a modern Kenyan identity through the use of traditional elements of Swahili culture in contemporary Kenyan artistic production. So this is just the geographical position of Kenya in the African continent. In particular, I will discuss the presence of Swahili tangible and intangible cultural heritage in the paintings by Peter Ngugi, a painter based in Nairobi, which is now one of the most vibrant artistic centers on the African continent and the location of the Kenyan artistic mainstream. I would like to show that the Swahili culture quoted in his painting responds to a specific identity function. Peter Ngugi is a Kikuyu artist based in Thika, close to Nairobi. Kikuyu is the tribe. He is a well-established painter in the artistic mainstream of the capital. In the background of his paintings, Peter Ngugi usually quotes some pattern coming from traditional Swahili fabrics, kanga or leso, which are used as a screen to project the urban life of common people, often dressed in Western clothes. This series of painting was born thanks to a project conducted with youth and dedicated to the theme of the corruption of Kenyan institutions. The characters don't have faces. Their faces are completely dark because they are victims of the corruption or they have taken advantage of corruption, but everything is hidden. They don't have faces because it is difficult to find people responsible for the corruption. Everyone is corrupt. They try to be cool thanks to their poses and their Western clothes, but they are people waiting without a job, waiting for something, wait for a change or an improvement. The pattern of the Swahili fabric, kanga or leso, in the background of painting is used to contextualize the message, which is georeferenced in Kenya. Kanga and leso are an important identity marker. Kanga and leso are symbols of traditional Kenya, but they are also used to criticize a bad aspect of Kenyan society, corruption. Kanga is a rectangular cotton fabric produced and sold in couple and mostly used by women. In Kiswahili language, kanga means poultry, maybe because some decoration of the first sample reminded the feathering of wild poultry. Leso indicates the same fabric, but the word leso is mostly used on the coast. The origin of this fabric at the end of the 19th century is quite questionable, and it is probably connected with the arrival of pieces of fabric from India and Arabia. Kanga or leso was born as a simple fabric, then it started to have also borders, and then the proverb, which is written in Kiswahili, at the beginning in Arabic characters, and then in Latin characters. The proverbs in the fabric are very important, and sometimes kangas are chosen and bought by clients because of the message in the writing. In this slide, you have many possibilities of using kangas as clothes. In this painting, conceived in 2020, the background seems to reproduce the decorative pattern of a kanga, but on the contrary, the painting stylizes the symbol of COVID-19. In this way, the painting is georeferenced in Kenya because the background seems to reproduce a kanga pattern, but it is also dated to the COVID period. In this slide, you can see another use of kanga decoration connected to politics and political fights. The first kanga is a celebration of Barack Obama as American president. underlining its African and Kenyan origin. By the second kanga, the Nairobian artist Kawira Muricha proudly expressed the sincereness of the same-sex love fighting for having civil rights. On the right, you can see a kanga decorated with the symbol and the color of the Jubilee Party. If you wear this kanga, you could be a supporter of this party. On the occasion of the last election in Kenya, which took place in August 2022, Peter Ngugi was inspired by this political use of kangas to create a peculiar series of paintings. In this painting, the writing on the fabric expresses the disappointment of the common citizen for politics. If the Sultan, the president, can do anything, what can a citizen do? In the painting, the presence of the kanga is fully used in all its possibilities, not only as a decorative pattern, but also for its power to deliver a strong message thanks to the proverb. In an opposite direction, another Kenyan artist, the Kisii sculptor Peter Kenyanya, also interprets and uses the kanga in his artistic production. In this piece, the artist quotes the typical way in which Swahili women wear kangas or on their ends, almost producing a sculpture by fabric. However, in this case, the use of an identity element of the traditional culture doesn't have any political and progressive implications. On the contrary, always in occasion of the last election, Peter Ngugi has produced an interesting series to denounce the misogyny of the Kenyan political system. The series consists of small format paintings that are sold at a low price, especially for local market, on the occasion of a local painting fair. The series is therefore aimed at the local Kenyan audiences. The series is designed to have an impact, a strong impact on local society. The series is entitled These Seats Are Taken and shows men dressed in local kanga or international clothes sitting on invisible chair on a pink background. Pink is the international color of femininity, but the protagonists of the series are male. The chairs are invisible, but we can feel their symbolic weight because they are occupied by men. The message is, on the occasion of the last election, all the seats in the parliament are already occupied by men, no seats for women. In this way, Peter Ngugi wants to denounce not only Kenya's political misogyny, but also the lack of gender balance in parliament. Before using kanga and leso, Peter Ngugi worked on the Swahili culture in occasion of his participation to Lamo Art Festival in 2017, when he produced a series entitled Walls Have Ears. This series was selected for the cover of the exhibition catalog of the festival, as you can see in this slide. The background of painting is the pattern of Swahili architecture, which sometimes invades the figures in the foreground as well. The series represents Muslim men talking each other, often seen by behind. We don't know the content on their conversation, but we have the sensation that they are revealing secret to each other. They think they are not heard, they speak in secret, but walls have ears because the walls of Swahili houses are pierced and let the sound of voices pass through. The theme the sound is explicit only in the last painting, in which we have the speaker of the mosque recalling the public call for prayer. In this way, the series thematized the issue of the sound of Swahili everyday life, but also criticized the hypocrisy of a society based on rumors and open secrets. More recently, Peter Ngugi took part in an artist's residency in Menorca, a Spanish island in the Mediterranean Sea. He was there with 3 other artists, the illustrator Ana Gurduza and writer Alexandra Miakiewicz from Romania, and Arim Andrew from Uganda. You can see 3 protagonists of this residency in the picture. For Peter Ngugi, it was, Anna and Alexandra worked together on Romanian proverbs. For Peter Ngugi, it was an opportunity to share knowledge about proverbs, which are very important in the Kenyan Kanga and Leso, as we have already reported. Arim Andrew is a gay activist artist working on the controversial issue of LGBT rights in Uganda. Peter Ngugi was working on the theme of the traditional Kenyan wedding, in which Kanga and Leso are still protagonists. As you can see in this painting, a man still depicted with a black and anonymous face, the whole theme of corruption, looks at 5 veiled women. The women's heads are covered by Kanga or Leso. The artists portray a specific ritual. During the wedding, the bride and other women are covered by Kangas. The groom has to identify his real bride just by looking at her. For each mistake, he has to deliver 2 goats to the bride's family. In Minorca, while discussing gay marriage with Ugandan artist Arim Andrew, Peter Ngugi decided to start a new series, modifying the original one dedicated to the traditional Kenyan wedding. He began by taking photographs of his Ugandan colleague dressed as a veiled bride during the unveiling. The strong winds of Minorca facilitate the production of this new amazing series. As you can see in this slide, the silhouette of his Ugandan colleague, dressed as a bride, is placed against a neutral background in which the proverb is not missing at the bottom of the image. Peter Ngugi began to work on the theme of unveiling using the extraordinary figurative power of the Kanga on the wind. In these 2 paintings, this one and this other one, Ngugi has captured the real moment of unveiling, the moment when you discover that the bride is not a woman, but a man. In my opinion, this gender invention is a subtle visual protest. Rather than simply denouncing the lack of same-sex marriage in Kenya, Ngugi imagines and proposes a possible and more inclusive future for all Kenyan citizens using traditional and identity symbols of Kenyan marriage, the Kanga and the unveiling ritual. We can say that some elements of the traditional past, in this case, the materiality of Kanga and the rituality of Kenyan heterosexual wedding, are used by Peter Ngugi in a progressive way to modernize his country, getting elements directly from his own identity culture. Using the categories of the British anthropologist Jack Goody, we could, in a sense, speak of a renaissance, an African renaissance. Goody works on the presence of many renaissances, not only in Europe, but also in Arab culture, Judaism, India, and China. All these renaissances, observed comparatively, are characterized by a return to some founding texts or visual documents in order to create something new, to move forward toward a socio-cultural renaissance. This is what happened in Italy during the Renaissance, thanks to a vigorous reconsideration of antiquity that is the traditional past of Europe. According to Goody or Weber, the phenomenon of socio-cultural rebirth through looking at the back entails a risk. Instead of being progressive, retrospection can be conservative and reactionary. In Christianity and Islam, but it can occur in all symbolic, religious, and cultural systems, the re-examination and reactivation of previous positions, considered primigenial and original, as strict not only phenomenon of reform, but also of fundamentalism, very dangerous fundamentalism. In effect, in Kenya, recourse to traditional identity, sometimes invented past as an invented identity, has been massively used to feed the homophobic discourse. Ordinary people think that homosexuality is not an original part of Kenyan identity and that the same-sex practices are an effect of a bad influence of colonialism. On the contrary, the current law against sodomy in Kenya is a British law brought to Kenya by the British colonialists and abolished in Britain in the 90s, but still active in Kenya. In conclusion, we can observe that Peter Ngugi seems to use elements of the Swahili tangible and intangible cultural heritage in a progressive way, without looking at it as a nostalgic past to which coming back. With the wish to build a new and better society, the artist uses this element to denounce corruption, the bad politics of the country, the hypocrisy of those who believe to keep secret, misogyny, and homophobia. On the other hand, they are an exaltation, an ennobling of the most genuine and original Kenyan culture as well. Swahili fabrics and architectural elements are, in a sense, also symbols of identity, which makes the image immediately recognizable as a work of art created in Kenya by a Kenyan artist who knows the complex local reality as well, very well. In my opinion, the use of Swahili heritage in Peter Ngugi's art has a very strong function in creating a new Kenyan identity. A modern country can thrive by using the more original elements of traditional Swahili culture in a progressive way and not as an atavism. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Giuseppe. Thanks a lot for your first speech. It was really a great opening of the panel, especially because you focused the attention on open dialogue with the text and images. So it was really interesting to see the real artworks of the artist. But we will be back on this topic later on at the end of the three presentation. And so now I can give the floor to Francesco Rocchetti with a speech about the obsession on poverty and the organic gaze of the slum. And Francesco Rocchetti has a PhD in behavioral science and social relations, and he's a scholar of Gramsci and Vygotsky, and a lecturer at the University of Macerata for psychological subjects. He's a support teacher for students with special needs in a vocational school in Italy. So, Francesco.
Thank you. I'm going to show the presentation of my speech. I hope you can see in a good way. Yeah. Okay. So, good evening to everyone. The aim of my speech is to show some example of representation of slums in order to show a perspective produced by the inhabitants of them. capable of meeting the expectation of the tourist and Western operator. If I simplify the mechanism of reminiscence activated by travel, in European culture, there are two macro areas that strongly impact the collective imagination: the Anglo-American imagination and the African imagination. Italy and the whole Europe after the Second World War experienced a real American cultural diffusion, propagated by the economic development linked to the USA. But at the same time, in front of the economic quick development, the Catholic Church spread a narrative of poor Africa. When visiting New York for the first time, it is highly possible that the visitor will have a feeling of familiarity with the city, kind of feeling of having seen it before. Given the uniqueness of the city, it is clear that the imagery has been largely structured throughout the filmography. In the first trip to Africa, a rather similar phenomenon is created, except that in this case the imagery is probably structured by documentaries and television reports, denouncing and describing the social condition and the action that in that context of poetry are carried out by NGOs and by religious organizations. At the first contact with the population of villages, the visitor therefore has the sensation that this is too as known, and the eye lingers on the bare feet of the children, on the dust, on the dirty and threadbare clothes, the thin bodies. It is as if the mind was seeking for confirmation of an expectation, and at the same time was unable to detach itself from the discovery of the true and concrete existence of poor people. A kind of a process of emotional stabilization in the face of the great difference in social condition experienced. It is clear that the image of the sub-Saharan Africa as a whole is conveyed more in the West by the narrative of the state of poverty in which a large part of the population lives, rather than by political reflection on its development. Some fundraising campaigns linger on images of sick, malnourished children and emaciated, sad faces. The aim of moving people to compassion loses any charge of denunciation to take on a function of inducing emotion and sense of guilt, repressed by the money given out of charity. This highly structured imaginary not only crushes the advanced aspect that can be found in cities like Nairobi or in other capital cities, but also bring the gaze in popular metropolitan context toward poverty. It is particularly interesting to notice that in the photographic repertories of Kibera and other slums, which can be found with Google, the images are focused on poverty, projecting the gaze on suffering and disadvantaged childhood. The tourist camera discloses that the encounter with the absolute poverty is the object of greatest interest. However, when leaving Nairobi, tourists choose to bring with them mostly painting with other subjects, generally animals, first of all the elephant, but also the giraffe. Nevertheless, the slums sometimes also become the object of pictorial representation on various occasions. Starting from a couple of examples, I would like to bring to light a different perception of the same, narrated and depicted by two of those two of artists who grew up in the slum. The first case is Joseph Banderi, born in 1978, raised in Kibera in a single-parent family made up of a mother, two sons, and two daughters. His story is common to many. One day, while he was speaking on the street...
Sorry, Francesco, your presentation is stuck.
I don't know why.
Yeah, exactly. We can see the cover.
Now?
Now. Okay.
Okay. I don't know why, but it's
But
okay.
you can put presentation.
I was in presentation way, but now I went back in the other position.
Okay.
Okay, I can go on in this way.
Okay.
So we are talking about Joseph Vanderi, probably is like an H. Joseph Vanderi. His story is common to many. One day, while he was out picking on the street, his brother died hit by a car. This event leads him to look for another way of living, but while he was illegally collecting wood in the forest, he was caught by the police, and in 1997 he was taken to prison for a few months. Once released from prison, he was entrusted to a center of New Zealand missionary fathers in Kibera, the Olympic Children's Center, where noticing his passion for drawing, he was supported with painting lesson. He discovered the possibility of selling painting as a job, and his subjects are the most common in the pictorial tradition for tourists, Maasai and animals. But then, in 2008, a Canadian lady asked him to paint a small picture of the slum, which she wanted to use to promote a fundraiser for the realization of a project in Kibera. After years, the same lady will return and bring the paint back to him. One day, he is noticed by one of the administrators of the Shalom House of the Koinonia Trust in Nairobi while he was selling outside the church. He asked him to paint a large slum for a room in the structure they were expanding, and so in 2011 the work was carried out and is still in the meeting room of the Shalom House in Gong Road today. Islam is painted from memory, with a bird's eye perspective, with soft colors, and the overall vision of an enormous continuous expanse of tiled roof. Small spaces and streets can be glimpsed between the roofs, and upon careful observation, scenes of daily life emerge with a taste for miniature and detail. Mothers holding children by the hand, kiosks selling fruit, chairs, clothes hanging out, water towers, tank, and the railway that divides the scene from the visitor's access perspective. In the background, the green of the parks, which fade into blue due to the distance in which the modern building of the city center blend together. A realistic choice in color and scene and overall perspective that, however, arises from his memory. There is no open-air painting or use of photograph. It does not depict scenes or condition of poetry, except in the trace of rubbish left on the margins. In the interview, the artist declares that when he painted the few examples of the slum, poverty did not really flash into his head. Poverty has no place in painting. Another idea of the slum is proposed by Richard Mudibo. Richard is born in 1981, grew up in the same slum, and studied art and design in Mukubu Boys High School. He is active in the Kivuli Art Center of Nairobi since 2015. There are any art craft are promoted as a job and an educational opportunity. He painted his first slum in 2010 as a sort of homage to his own place of birth. He adopts very strong colors, a dark brown, the one of a wet soil and mud, an intense blue of the sky without shades, the yellow and the fuchsia of the petty bourgeois buildings that border the slum. The perspective adopted is irregular and allows you to see the slum nearly at the street level. Mudibo takes us into the streets, where with naive form he depicts moments of joy, play, social relationship, life day by day, day-to-day activities, but no rubbish at all. Everything is clean, a kind of a mirror of idealistic society. So the passage in this case is very strong. It is intended to depict an emotional and value dimension made up of a careful and lively relationship of mutual support. People are not simply intent on their commitments, but they are in relationship. The exclusion in the narration of poetry, therefore, links him to the other author, Vanderi. But in this case, he adds a note of values that allow us to identify in him, in essence, a form of a narration of a cultural identity found in the slum. The image of the slum sought by the tourist is not the one narrated by those who live there. The Modibo slum leave a simple realism to enter into a sort of declaration of identity of value. The Eurocentric mainstream imaging according to which the slum is a place of desperation, a sort of Dante's circle of hell, is not upsetted. He expresses an emic point of view which tells us of a place of colors and sociability. For this reason, Modibo can in some way be identified as a truly organic intellectual, according to the definition of intellectuals given by the famous Italian philosopher and politician Antonio Gramsci, who died in prison during the fascism. Gramsci is a careful scholar of what he calls the subaltern classes, the peasants and workers of early 20th century in Italy. He is interested in those cultural aspects that these social classes produce as their own way of organizing the world, excluding the residues of aristocratic and bourgeois culture that somehow reach the subordinates also through form of education. In short, Gramsci goes in search of vision of the world that are not backward, but different, other than the bourgeois vision of society based on conflict and profit. He believes that only people coming from those conditions, if they are put in a position to find an adequate language, can properly talk about their own world. He don't like political preachers who resemble religious people who want to tell the people the truth, but love common people who learn to tell their own point of view and therefore organize the vision of the world for of all people poor. In this case, Gramsci used the expression of organic intellectual, organic to the world it belongs, a vital piece of that, and at the same time intellectual, because it narrates and elaborates its words so much as to be able to communicate its specificities, representing in this way the point of view of the world of the people to which it belongs. In conclusion, in his works, through the iconographic choice, Modibo proposes an idea of a slum of high sociality and human solidarity, not the place of perdition, poetry, and moral degradation, thus representing the very world to which it belongs without failing in the search for what tourists want to see about that. Let them take photos, let the tourists take the photos of poetry, because capturing it takes little time compared to understanding the soul of a place that only those who grew up there know. Modibo thus clearly questioned the visitor. What idea of Africa do you want to take home with you? The poverty and the animals you have seen for generations on TV, or the one I tell you about? A remarkable intellectual operation worthy of the best political reflection. Thanks.
Thank you, Francesco, for your presentation. Once again, also in this speech, we can see this kind of approach to mix ideas, images, and also the political issues that we can raise through different languages. So it was really interesting also to hear you combining these different elements. And so now we can have the last speech, and I will take care of the speech that I planned together with Anne Muiti. And our title is Otherness in the Mirror, Artistic Dialogue and Pedagogical Sketches. So let me just briefly introduce ourselves. I'm Rosita De Luigi, an associate professor in education at the University of Macerata, and my research are focusing on a participatory approach with a intercultural perspective. I'm a Marie Curie Fellow Research at Pwan University in Kilifi and at Kenyatta University in Nairobi. And Anne Muiti is a Doctor of Arts, is a lecturer in Fine Art and Design at Kenyatta University in Kenya. And her research focuses on intercultural perspective in art. She's also a Marie Curie Fellow Researcher at Academy of Art in Szczecin in Poland, where he get the PhD during this year, and at University of Macerata. This kind of presentation is a combination of our skills and backgrounds, since I'm in the field of pedagogical topics, and Anne is a lecturer, but also an artist. And so she is producing artworks at professional level. So let me share the screen and the presentation. Okay, and I hope you can see it. Okay, great. So let me briefly start from the title, Otherness in the Mirror, Artistic Dialogues and Pedagogical Sketches. The idea, we built the idea while we were together during a project, and we had enough time to share ideas and perspectives, both on the artistic field and the pedagogical field. So we combine ideas and we try to design a presentation that is still ongoing, I have to tell you. But we want to share with you today some results. Unfortunately, Anne today cannot join us directly, but in a certain way, she will join us since I have some of our conversation like an audio. And so we can share and we can hear also her voice. So first of all, we had the opportunity to work together in a project, in a European project that is called TPIA, Transcultural Perspectives in Art and Art Education, in which our university, on my side, the University of Macerata in Italy, and on the side of Anne, the Kenyatta University in Kenya, were involved as partner. So her expertise is in the field of arts, both from theoretical perspective and from practical perspective. And my expertise from the field of pedagogy is also a kind of paradigm that needs practical experiences and workshop and action in the field. About briefly the project in which we were involved, since the project finished just last month. This project, the TPIA project, and so Transcultural Perspectives in Art and Art Education, investigates contemporary art in Europe and East Africa, specifically in Kenya, and forms of art education on both continents in transcultural perspective. The transcultural research in TPIA project was really combined through different skills. And in Kenya, we cooperate with the Kenyatta University, with the Pwan University, as you can see also from the CV and the brief presentation of Giuseppe and Francesco, and with the Technological University of Mombasa. But basically, with this paper, with this speech, I will be focused on Kenyatta University and this direct relation with Anne Muiti. The perspective of the broader project, the TPI project, was focused on fostering international and intersectoral mobility, guaranteeing high level of and effective sharing of knowledge. So basically, the project was in the framework of Erasmus project in a Marie Curie field. It means that it's a kind of project in which we founded and we received funded to travel and to have exchange among researchers, in this case from Poland, Italy, and Kenya. So the three countries that were like partners in the project. So the transcultural perspective in this project was the response to the three main strategies for the reduction of otherness developed due to globalization, so egocentrism, logocentrism, and ethnocentrism. And is essential to persuade individuals and to appreciate cultural diversity and to recognize the importance of defending and promoting tangible and intangible cultural heritage. In order to give you an idea of the framework of the project, I need to tell you that the TPIA project was developing according to three lines: the theoretical one, the academic, and the practical one. The theoretical basically was a research on relations between East African and European art. And you have seen already some highlights of this research, and you will see more of them in this presentation. The academic one was devoted to elaborate and implement the program in Fine Arts and Design at Pwani University College in dialogue with European institutions. And this course was open last year. And the practical one was supporting the development of art scene in the region in Kenya through a professional exchange and professional cooperation among artists, especially from Poland and Kenya, and through different events like a festival of art and art education, in which we as university were involved, like responsible for creativity, workshop, open lesson, laboratories for kids, both in Kenya and in Italy. So when we had the possibility with Anne to work together, and when we share period of time together in Italy and Kenya, we find really interesting to stress the importance of the encounter with creative languages that can in somehow influence identity, has a critical dimension. And this kind of critical dimension, that is the combination of different languages, is in an open dialogue between intercultural pedagogy and artistic expression. So we decided to conduct active research together, and we designed several activities, but today I will be more focused on our conversation. Let's call them conversation of research of me and Dan during this period. So the meeting between me and Dan, between the two researchers, bearers of different skills, experiences, and background, took place in the framework of the project, of the TPI project that I have shown you, thanks to the opportunity to spend long mobility periods together in Kenya and Italy, in a period that started in 2020 and finished in the framework of the project in 2024, but is still ongoing since now we have established further cooperation. So we share seminars, workshops, and practical experience in the field, led the dialogue to focus on each other's specificities, and focusing on a perspective in which it was possible to find a way to meet personal identity and professionals' identity and skills. And in this way, we at least try to design transdisciplinary and transcultural working paths in which we try to involve other people, not only colleagues, but our targets were also like school and socio-educational services and local association. In order to develop this kind of perspective and this kind of critical thinking about identities, the reciprocal mobilities were essential to get to know each other's fields of work and research together. feeling in familiar and distant places at the same time and mediating between the parties. It means that in somehow where we were in Kenya, Anne was the real mediator, and she introduced me in different kind of contexts and in different kind of cultural languages, and also in different way to share ideas, to use art as a tool to foster communication, and also to better understand the role of the art in the society. When Anne was here in Italy, I did the same. So we exchange our expertise and our knowledge of the places of the culture in order to mediate the possibility to the other to be part of the cultural environment in which we lived in this kind of secondment. So from an artistic and educational point of view, we organized initiatives aimed at the community in Italy and Kenya, like workshops in universities, in school, in a association of social educational services, in places aimed at the protection of minors, in which we introduced each other in the way that I explained to you. So in order to create a reciprocal rapprochement, we had to tell each other about ourselves and spend time exchanging experience in the mirror. So it was a kind of rediscovering ourselves and our identity while we were working together in our specific fields, mixing the fields and skills together, and also while we were involving other people in our thoughts and design of project. So we were not in search of confirmation of overlapping of identity, but rather we were in search of a concatenation of ideas and critical skills capable of generating innovation for both of us as researchers, but also generating innovation that could have an impact in the context in which we are located as persons and professionals. So I want to show you how we work together and how the process of critical thinking and rethinking identities it's going on. Because a key element of the dialogue and conversation was the Anne's artistic production and my educational research in the field. So it was a fruitful exchange that took place in a replanning of communication and relation in an original way. So we decided to have several conversations, and we recorded the conversation starting from her artworks. So starting to look through the artworks and to understand which kind of messages, which kind of languages, which kind of elements of identities we can retrace and rebuild together. So let me show you a combination, hopefully the technology will assist me, of the one of the path of the artworks that Anne created and the open dialogue that we had together. Let me start also the audio. So okay. Just a moment. Yeah, so, okay, last time we were in the point in which you were telling me the meanings of the artworks, and of course, I was really interested in this way to tell a story.
Yeah,
no?
the way to tell a story.
Yeah. And I remember very well that you tell me that, of course, in order to realize this kind of style, it was really difficult.
Yeah, very difficult.
And it was nice to think about the exchange, let's say, of inspiration among you and the kids. Because you went back in your past through the languages of the kids.
Yes, through the language of the visual language of the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the part that was difficult is that it's actually very difficult. It's like saying, let me speak like a child.
Let me speak like a child.
You know, like if today you say, you know the way children speak broken English or broken language, if you try to remind yourself how it was to speak like a child, it's not easy because your brain is already formed. So the visual language is the same because you are trying to think and create like a child, but you're not a child anymore. So for me, that the interaction with them made it much easier because then I was able to see them as they are and also to understand their language. Yeah. Then borrow from that, be influenced and also borrow from that vocabulary. Because this is a different vocabulary from, the other artworks, the artworks.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, the ones, Giuseppe, like the ones I was doing, it says like do multiple horizons. No, this one is like, it doesn't have any format or something you can point at and say, elements of design or principles of design have been used. However, without even knowing it, they still use the elements and principles because there's line, there's form, there's shape, there's arrangement in terms of unity and harmony. Somehow, it has a very naive way of communicating to you. Yeah.
And I like the idea that you grasp the messages of the kids, but you rebuild their messages and also their. Can we say something like the grammar of the visual language?
Yeah, exactly. The grammar and also, first of all, the vocabulary. You see, like when you are learning a language, you learn the language for you to have a vocabulary of a language, there is the elements that you need to use to make that language work. For instance, in Cas, the way they use for kids these days to be able to understand A, B, C, D. Or the vowels. You see, there's the vowels you use them. You combine them with these letters of the alphabet for you to create a word in the vocabulary. So the same way, I had to go back to that basic language of saying, knowing that if the language for the visual language for them is, how do I feel about this person, for instance, let me say that. If you tell them, let's say, can you draw for me mom and dad? And then I learned something else, even in that, it's not so obvious that these kids have mom and dad.
Exactly.
So for me, now I had to find another way of like communicating with them. A parent who is a parent, because some have single parents, some don't have parents, some have both parents. So just finding that language to communicate to them what I'm looking for, like who is mom, or who do you live with, or who lives in your house with you. It has to completely change from how I know a family unit. Or when you tell them, okay, draw for me your family unit, and I would have to use not English, but maybe Swahili. Exactly, because Swahili is the one they grasp faster. So I have to change also my language. So that's how I had to do it. Then I discovered some don't have who is mom and dad, and when they draw the mom, depending on who is more prominent or who is closer, then maybe they enlarge that one, they make the other one smaller, and things like that. So that's the vocabulary.
But do you remember the age of the kids that you meet during these workshops?
Yeah. They were the youngest that I met was 2.5 years.
Okay.
That was the youngest. In the lower elementary.
Yeah.
level. So that would be the entry point. Entry point, that is what they used to call baby class then. So 2.5 to around 4 years would be that baby class. Then from around 5 to around 6, then it's the next level. Then 6 to 7, 8 is the pre-unit one.
Yeah.
So the ones I found most interesting are the entry level and the middle. Because the middle are beginning to understand what is, they've gone past the scribbling.
Yeah.
The 2.5, they're still scribbling, creating circles, the mandalas and what have you.
Yeah.
But the middle ones, the ones from around 4 to 6 years, those are the ones now I got so much information.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I remember also that, of course, in order to design these artworks, you went through your personal story, your biography.
Yeah, yeah.
And also you try to represent several elements like the shapes, but also the words, the number.
And also the way to write my name, because they do a mirror image for their names. Yeah.
So which kind of creativity you used to realize this one? Because I was interested on that point that you tell me I need to deconstruct my skills in order to be open to realize an artwork like this one. So,
okay.
Yeah.
What part of my creativity did I use? Okay. First of all, it's the technique. The technique. Before even I think of creativity, because I'm thinking of these kids are storytelling. This is their method of storytelling because they don't have the vocabulary of speaking. So the only language they can speak is the visual language, because that's how they learn how to do even their ABCD. That's how they learn to do 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
It's through they are taught through visual images. 1 circle, 2 circles. If you add them, you get 2 circles together. So that is already they are learning the visual language through their teachers.
Yeah.
So for me, now I have to go back to that and realize these kids are at that level where they're trying to construct and connect their words with images. So the first thing is, first of all, the technique. How do I create an image that looks childlike? It means my hand, I either use the left hand so that it's weaker.
Okay.
It doesn't have the strength of creating a straight line. Like now, you see, if I go with the left hand, then it doesn't give me a straight, it will give me like a very organic line. So because it's broken. So I had to figure out what technique, first of all, do I use to be able to achieve that.
And this was just a sample of our conversation, also in order to stress the attention on the idea that we are intertwined identities. And it was really interesting for me, also from a pedagogical and educational point of view, to see how Anne Muiti was able to mirror herself in the different identities of kids and to value the ideas of kids and their stories. There is a part of the conversation in which she says, I was not so much focused on the creativity in itself, but it was really focusing on the possibility to give word to the kids as storytellers. No, so our dialogue went through this kind of topics and investigating the themes of representation of self and the words with the eyes and artistic traits of children allows the artist to represent reality using multiple meanings. And it was, Hannah told me, was one of the more challenging way to use art, because she needs to, in a certain kind, went out of her skills, technical skills, I mean, and come back to the essential, open up biographical and autobiographical experiences. So have you seen and heard the challenge of narrating one's own identity, rereading and retracing it through other educational perspectives and other artistic traits? Engage me and Anne in research conversation from the original artistic works, and the process is still ongoing. And this kind of conversation for us are really interesting also in order to share and to plan other experiences with kids, teenagers in the frame of art education. So through the joint exploration of several works by Anne Witty, significant aspects of cross-cultural identity and valorization of experience emerged, but in the first person, in the first person and in a joint mirroring. So resonances, parallels, and common references became the background to the description of plural narratives of otherness. And that was a way to open our different perspective and to try to following a path in which it's possible to find other ways of research and also on description of plural and meaningful identities. So I think I finished my my time and also this third presentation, and now we have also enough time to discuss. So maybe if you have questions or maybe comments, we are open to open a dialogue with you, and also among us, of course, if we have comments or other questions, we can share some time together. I can see that you are talking, but we cannot hear you. Maybe the mic is off.
Okay, thank you, Rosita. Thank you, Capriti and Francisco. Yeah, they were quite interesting presentation. The reason why I wanted to listen to this presentation was because of the idea of otherness that is added to the presentation title. And then for us here in Africa, or as an African scholar, when we think of otherness, it takes us back to ideas about communism in African community. Though the concept of otherness can be found in a lot of the existential work and existential philosophy. My name is Isoken. I have a PhD in philosophy. So I did a lot of works in transgender, personal identity, and ethics. So that was what attracted me to listen to your conversation. Okay, so I have a few questions. Let's see. Okay, so for the for the first presenter, you know, I liked you were talking about the images you were showing and about the idea of corruption that you saw. The fact that those fabrics had words attached to them was quite unique, which is not normally seen in a lot of African fabrics. I have a paper I wanted to present that has to do with a concept of rappers, African thoughts about rappers. You know, here in Nigeria, from my part of the world, from my part of Nigeria, women tie wrappers, and they use two wrappers when they want to go to events, and these wrappers actually have a lot of meanings. So another reasons why I attended this was because of that idea. Okay, your presentation was very interesting because of the issues that you were showing a lot of fabrics and how those fabrics were being used as a conversation, sometimes political conversation, or sometimes other things. Okay, so but my question is, when you see those fabrics and then you say they did not have face, you know, so what I wanted to see was the idea of the otherness, and then the otherness and African communism in that work, which the aim of your studies actually showed that was not part of your conversation anyway, but it was quite a rich one. I think I'm speaking to Caproti, okay. Then for the second presenter,
you were talking about poverty, how he what's the name of that artist now? Hold on. Modibo, how he saw poverty in a lot of his conversation. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you, which you seem to have you addressed towards the end of your conversation, was if the area of perception or the perspective of the artist when it comes to the work of art. You know, how work of art can be interpreted in different ways. You know, so when you were seeing all that, in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, that's your own interpretation of what you are seeing. And then it could also be his own interpretation. You could live in a slum and not think about the slum. You could live in a slum and decide that I want to see beauty, and everything you see is beauty. So I think it depends on the perspective or what captures the attention. That is why two children can grow up from the same environment and become different things. I think it has to do with the kind of focus they had when they were growing up or in that environment. So Rosita, I like your own conversation as well. The fact that you collaborated with Anne to do your presentation. And then I was like, oh, that's super. You know, the question I wanted to ask was the cultural difficulties that you experienced, because those are quite two different environments. Talk about Kenya, you talk about, where is she presenting from?
Italy.
Italy, yeah. So they are quite diverse. And then, you know, even if your collaboration, you know, Kenyans were colonized by British. So, so talking about the collaboration and the cultural issues that were faced was one of the things I actually wanted to hear from your conversation. But thank you very much.
Thanks to you for this question. Then maybe we can start with the first presenter, so we can give feedback and open up other ideas.
So thanks a lot for your question. It's a very complicated question, and I'm not sure of being able to answer properly, and also because to deal with the concept of otherness applied to my artist, it's quite difficult. It's quite difficult, but if you interpret otherness like the idea of from the point of view of the gender, for instance, obviously otherness is the female condition in Kenya. If you consider homosexuality as otherness, obviously my artist Peter Ngugi Temata is also the problem of otherness through the dealing with the theme of homosexuality. I personally didn't use the concept, the category of otherness, because in Europe, for instance, there is a big debate also concerning the language to use. And the otherness is a controversial is a controversial term that we use with some problem, because there is a big debate. This is the reason why I'm avoiding to use the concept of otherness, even if obviously, for instance, in Europe, I'm a specialist of the depiction of otherness, religious otherness in particular. So it's something very familiar for me. But it's a concept that it's difficult to express and to apply in different contexts. This is the reason why I didn't use it. But you are right, because if we consider the point of view of the gender, so the position of women and the position of LGBT people and community, yes, this is we can enter in the category of otherness, because they are other in in comparison to the construct, which is European, white, male, and heterosexual. Everything is outside of this category, obviously, is otherness. No, so you are right. I could use this category, even if I avoided it.
Thank you.
So what I can add is that clearly any artist can decide what to paint and can decide how to create an idea of what is painting. The question is that I try to show that it's very strong in our imaginary as a European when for the first time you go in Africa. That you are in a kind of documentary situation, okay? So you can see, oh my God, it's really true, okay? You have to imagine that we grew up in the years and years and years looking this kind of documentary, and generally, if you talk about Africa, in Europe, you talk about this point of view, poetry, 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 and so on. So it's very difficult, for example, that you can find a documentary that is about how smart is, I don't know, engineering or other things produced in some sub-Saharan African countries, as for example in Kenya. When I was in Kenya, in Kilifi and in Nairobi, I was inside this kind of point of view. So I was really hurt by the bad situation, social condition of the guys, of the children, and it was difficult for me to come out of this kind of point of view and be able to see other things. And when in January, when you go around in Africa to find something that you would like to bring at home as a souvenir, you can find a lot of people painting animals, not about painting Islam, for example. But if you go in Africa, generally it's possible that you take some pics of this poetry. So this was my problem. I'm coming to Kibera and I was looking for my photo to say, okay, this poetry is really existing. When I met Mudibo, he showed me his beautiful slam, and and I noticed that it was a different kind of slam. Seems to be something really naive, but it was not really naive because it was an idea to say, look, you think that Kibera is just a place of poetry, but Kibera is a place of a social relationship. So this means that you have to recognize that social relationship are surviving in that kind of condition much more than in other condition. And the soul of Kibera is not poetry, is another idea of a human being relationship. So why is so interesting for me? Because studying this Italian philosopher Antonio Gramsci, that was really interested in how poor people were able to say, to talk about a different idea of society from the inside point of view. So Gramsci was fighting against for example, that socialists that go to poor people saying, you have to do this, you have to think this, you have to fight in this way, and so on. He was interested to create the opportunity of poor people to be able to express their own thoughts. So when I met Mudibo, I recognized immediately that he was trying to do exactly this. I don't want to paint a Kibera as the European people would like to see. I want to paint a different Kibera that is my own Kibera, and you have to learn from me what is Kibera. You have not to teach me how to treat on Kibera. You don't have to go in Kibera thinking I have to help these people. You have to go there and learn that is a very interesting place where people are supporting each other, are you sure that in your country people are able to support each other in the same way? This is the question. I hope to be, I was much more clear now.
Yeah, it's okay.
So
Thank
thank
you.
you. I will give my feedback. First of all, thanks for all these interesting questions, really, because he takes us to go deeply on our presentation and also to clarify some aspect of the framework, but also some insight of the experiences that we conducted. So about the cultural challenges and differences, we were combine ideas and experiences both in Italy and Kenya since we had the opportunity to travel each other. So I went to Kenya and Anand came to Italy several times since 2020 till now. So the strategy that we used, it was basically have our time of research together and try to have experiences together and to share which kind of narratives we can get from each other's, not just from me and her together, but also with the places that for her were familiar, with the places and people that for me were familiar. So we try in a certain kind of way, especially in the first period that we work together, to better understand our reciprocal stereotypes and our traditional narratives that we have of not only of the country, but also of the kind of field and research that we were involved in. So it takes time. So the first challenge was exactly this one. So we are not neutral eyes, but we had to understand which kind of perspective we are using and applying to the decodification of reality. Once that we get our perspectives that is not neutral and is not the only one, we try in somehow also, thanks to the experience, and once again to this longitudinal cooperation. So one experience is not enough. So you need time to do research together, and maybe also to understand that you have to rearrange in somehow your design, and you have also to reschedule experiences. And if you want to open up ideas of participation and co-creation of knowledge, you are not the only one. So you need to open the floor to everybody in a kind of cooperation and critical thinking. So we went through a paradigm that we can call also the urgency of decolonize our paradigm. For example, we went through authors like Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, like Ngugi Thiong'o, like Belux and Paulo Freire, and all these authors that in the field of humanistic studies give us the opportunity to understand that the mediation, the human mediation relation is necessary in order to put in practice the process that we can call the creolization process, in which you can combine elements, skills, perspective, and paradigms, but you are not trying to understand just one way of the social context, educational context, or life context. But you are trying to, first of all, to design together an experience, and then to check if you can have some impact and feedback, and then redesign again and again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks. So thanks to you. Thanks for the attention, the conversation, and also this feedback and questions. And I think we have almost finished our session. So thanks once again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for your attention.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.